Hi there, Steve again. Well, as you can see, I'm working in the middle of this pandemic and working from home. And in this case, it's a ranch out here in Seguin that I have. And I have to admit, it's got some benefits here. Certainly, I can wear my Texas t-shirt and enjoy some of the sunshine and outdoors that I haven't been able to do in a while. So today I want to talk about a issue you might be thinking about with respect to your governing of your business, your retail energy business in this era or this days of the pandemic. One of the things, of course, is you're all working remotely. So, that poses some new challenges. And you also are probably making a lot of decisions, at least your board is and your management team. And those all have to be sort of reflected in your resolutions. And you want to make sure that you have a good system of record to track all the decisions that were made and that they were appropriately approved by the board, and have a good housekeeping for your corporate records. Now, I also know that from various companies I've worked with, they always intend to purchase some kind of software to manage their corporate business, but never seem to get there. It's expensive. It involves some fair amount of training, and the fallback typically is the Microsoft Office system, which includes folders, Excel spreadsheets, emails, the whole gamut of the Office suite. But the thing is, those tools are very valuable for what they provide. And so an Excel spreadsheet is really about not data management in the sense of documents, but in terms of numbers, to calculate numbers. And things like the Windows folders, it's a pretty antiquated way of creating a system of record, with folders and subfolders and subfolders. And, think about when you try to search through those, there's no context. You don't get the immediate ability to switch between documents and companies. So what I did is I created a legal entity management system, a LEM, in Airtable that doesn't cost you anything, frankly. You can get a free account at Airtable, and unless you want some of the bells and whistles related to their pro version, there's nothing about this for most companies that would cost them a cent. But I think you'll find it a very useful tool, especially now we're working remotely, because one of the things you have to think about is, how are you doing your corporate governance? I assume it may be through Zoom, for that matter. That's the new hot use of technology. And if you have your board meetings online like that, and people are taking notes and things like that, and you're preparing your resolutions, you want to have them logged and saved in a system of record that is available to everyone, all the parties, and that they can change comments to the minutes, not by having to send an email, which has to go to another person, but literally in one workspace, and the comments can be made and then the minutes can be adjusted. So let me show you how this table works. You see my table here, legal entity management, and what I've done is created a series of registries that frankly you would see in maybe commercial software as various sections of the software. This is the more rugged and basic that you need, but I always was taught from an uncle who was in the Navy, take all that you need but no more than you need. And in fact, for most companies, you probably don't need an expensive software system. This will do just fine, and it's free. And I'm giving it away for free, so I hope it helps you out. So in this first table, we have the legal entity registry. And in that, we have a number of fields that you can fill out. And you can fill it out, frankly, just using a grid system like this. But you can also use a form that you can create. And here I've created a legal entity form that you could actually share on the internet to one of your paralegals or somebody else in the company to just basically, input data. And by doing so, add the record that you need to this particular table. The general view shows that I have what would be the first table, which is the unique ID, and that would be the entity name. And then a drop-down menu here, which would be the type of entity. And so I've listed the most common forms of legal entities like LLC, corporations, S corps, such. And you can add and modify this however you like. I have a table where you can add jurisdictions of formation. If there isn't a drop-down option available that you already have or that you need but don't have, then you can just add one yourself. A date field here for the data formation. It's if they're shareholders, the limited partners, who is the ownership entities. Then the purpose of this entity. This sometimes can be much more lengthy and covers more breadth, but we're going to say in this case it's retail sales. Then we have the capital structure here, and that's only for corps. If you happen to create a C Corp. Under the field for franchise tax and reporting due date, that typically occurs on a certain date in the year. Maybe it's for everybody, it's the 1st of March, or it may be based on when you filed and your anniversary date. So you want to, this is a very important date to make sure you don't miss. It's often forgotten about until you get the warning letter that you didn't do it on time, which is no big deal, but frankly, you should be more on top of it. You shouldn't have to, be in a position where you're getting warning letters so that you won't get revoked. You want to put your principal place of business in this field, and in this field, a dissolution date if you ever dissolve the company. And finally, I left a open field for any notes. Now you can always add more fields to add more information that you think is particularly relevant to the legal entity registry, but I think this is the basic. Now, one of the things that I've created is multiple views, and you can create multiple views by simply going through and, for example, let's say you take the grid, and then by using hide fields, filtering views, or grouping fields, you can turn this into a particular format that you like that shows only certain information in certain sort of ways. So in here, we have a one that shows companies that's 90 days before due date. So if your franchise tax is due, these companies will show up if you're 30 days before the franchise due date. So that's a very helpful field. You can also include that in a block here where you can create actually a chime and set the metrics in this chime that would give you a warning that it's coming due. Now, this chime is part of what they call Airtable blocks. This is part of the pro version. Again, you don't need it, but if you don't, it's a very relatively cost-effective software. So if you feel like you like the bells and whistles, literally, then you can get this. In the registered agent registry, it would be what you'd expect. You'd want the unique ID name of the registrar. You would here have what they call a legal entity lookup. So you would click on your field here, and you would then hit the plus button, and you would pick from one of your companies that are listed in your list of companies that was in the prior registry. And you can also just type in the name. If you had literally 30 companies, you could type in here and immediately locate the company you want. Then you would put the name of the registered agent. Again, it's a drop-down menu, I believe, yes. And a mailing address for the registered agent, phone number, email address, the website, the annual renewal date for the registered agents, which will, and the agent annual fee, which you're going to be expecting to pay. Again, you can add more fields for information that you need, but this would be a good way for if you wanted to, let's say, grouped by company. Say you had different registered agents for different companies, or grouped by registered agent. In this case, My Agent LLC here, and you could potentially have another agent up here that served other companies. Although I know that in most cases, people tend to use the same registered agent, no matter what companies there are. You could create, different groupings here by the agent. In this field, something that everybody's always asking for and don't have handy is the federal employer and unique identification number. And so why not have a registry right here along with your entities that you could quickly refer to and search for, so that you can find the FEIN number when some form or another asks you to put that in there. You'd also include here a field where you could actually have attached the FEIN documentation, so you could verify where you got that number and confirm that that's the right number, and then the date that the FEIN was assigned. Again, nice to have all in one place. You don't have to be searching in different folders that might be not where you would think it would be. At least here, all the information is all located together. You can search the entire database, or you can go from table to table, but it beats going through folders and guessing what folders' names have what information. The DBA registry is, again, if your entity is using different names, but is not a different legal entity, it's just doing business as another name. So you make sure you keep that straight if one of your retail companies has multiple marketing names in different states. In your foreign jurisdiction registry, you have all the states in which you are licensed to do business. So of course, you may be informed in Texas, but you want to do business in New York, you have to ask for a license to do business in New York as a foreign entity. And you want to keep all of that straight, as well as the effective date that you're registered, the annual renewal date for that registry, and the dollar amounts that you're going to have to pay. Again, this is very typical of something that people forget about and don't pay, and they really need to be on top of it. So, with this table, you could set up either manual reminders by looking at groupings, or you could do a block and do a chime or reminder when you're within 90 days or 30 days of the expiration of a foreign registration. Here's something I think is very important is, and I see badly managed in a lot of companies, is keeping straight who the current directors are. And so you need a director-manager registry. And that would give you names, especially of people who might be directors on multiple companies, or changes, so that you want to keep that up to date, and so which ones were directors at one point and when they no longer became a director, which is tracked in some of the other fields here. For example, the registration removal date and the resolution that caused the removal. Again, these are things that in the heat of the moment, when it's done, someone leaves unexpectedly by quitting or is fired, the paperwork doesn't get done. And it really needs to be tracked here, because at some point in the future, you're going to get audited, you're going to need to produce this information, and it's better to have it all in one database with everything collected in. And when your paralegal, whoever is working on one thing like legal entity registry, something new comes in, they might say, oh, I need to update my directors, and go through and make sure that they got all the paperwork here. And the beauty of all this is that not only the contact information in here, but actual documents are included. So you have the appointment resolution, the resignation date, and the removal resolution. These are all things that, a sign of good housekeeping. Likewise with the officers, same situation, and basically same fields. You need to maintain a list of your officers, when they're removed, when they were appointed, what was their date of removal, and what was the removal resolution. Finally, I have here, well, not finally, delegations. This is delegations of authority registry. This is a situation where for each of the entities, there are certain aspects about those entities, actions that certain people can take. So in some cases, approval of payment of funds less than $500 can be done by all the officers, and you want that done. But if it's someone asking for credit support, that would be by the CFO. If it was something related to information technology, it'd be the CTO. And so, or the spending of funds greater than $1 million might be only the CEO and the board. All those things should be tracked. So at a moment's notice, and I've heard it so many times, like, who has authority for this? Who has that? Who can? What's the trigger? And you could quickly review this and find out, okay, who has the authority? Who's the current director? What's the threshold? Because nobody ever remembers those things. And if you really were stuck, you'd have a copy of the DOA right there. And what's great about this Airtable is that all this information can be viewed from your desktop, your iPad in a meeting, if you have an iPad, frankly, from your phone, if you're in a taxi and someone's calling you and saying, hey, CEO, who has the authority to sign this document? And you could quickly review this all from your phone because it's all cloud-based. And finally, the last field I have here is a company that, obviously mythical company, Acme LLC Corporate Records Log. And what I would recommend doing is that you create additional tables for each entity with respect to the specific corporate records. So, anything like the current director roster, the operating agreement, resolutions, presentations, agendas, all that stuff should be included here and logged. And you would have in these fields an example of the actual document, the categories of what it belongs to. For example, is it a formation document? Is it a resolution? Is it written consent? The type of resolution, maybe it was the responsible party. In most cases, it's the secretary. The status, it's in draft, it's final waiting approval, or it's been actually filed, and the effective date of that document. And so, again, by the grouping, you could say, okay, I want to look at all formation documents. And you could quickly click on that field, and it would just show you the formation documents. And maybe you might need to look at resolutions, and it would show you just the resolutions. How neat is that? And it's free, and it's cloud-based. So all of this can be shared from multiple locations by multiple people using different devices. It's in this day and age now, if anything, the pandemic has taught us is how we need to rely more heavily on cloud-based software where people can be in different places at different times using different devices to access the information. Information is key. So I hope you find this table useful. It's a starting point. You certainly can put any other hang other decorations on it that you want. I have found, though, that you don't want to make it too complicated. Keep things relatively simple. Otherwise, people who come up to it, like this new employee who's like trying to figure it out, you want to make it intuitive. If you create too many linked folders and too many stylistic things that are difficult to unwind, and you can't, what you want is this to be as simple as an Excel spreadsheet where anybody can sit down and say, okay, I know how to add a new field that will show this information, and I know how to create a view that will show that information in isolation that any manager could then look at. You don't want to create a situation where the only person who can make changes is someone from IT. That's the whole point of getting around and using a low code, no code software. And that's what this is. So I'm very passionate about the software, and I'm very passionate about the applications for retail energy companies and frankly, legal entity of any type. This is applicable anywhere. So have at it. Give me comments if you have any suggestions. And I hope you find this very valuable in these coming days, weeks, and months ahead as we work remotely.